Good morning. You're just sitting up there, or you have a chart? Irene. Hello, Irene. Hello, Irene.
Please join me in lighting the chalice. The words are in your order of service. We light this meeting tone, sign of our quest for truth and meaning.
Morning, David.
Hi, go to the website and look at sermons and you'll see it. I also just sent out an email that has the link. We're having problems.
Okay, sermons. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, John. That was beautiful. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Low Country. If you can't say that 3 times real fast, the UUCL is just fine. I am not Charlie Tyler. He is off visiting with his family, but I am Kim Lewis, a member of your board, and I'd like to take this time to welcome any new visitors that are new today or here maybe for a second time. And if you're willing, I'm going to ask that you stand, share with us your name and where you're from so that way we may get to know you. And perhaps there will be someone here from your neck of the woods. So if we have anybody in this side on my right, your left, any new people? What about here? Oops. One in the back? That's okay. Well, welcome. And in this center right here, anyone?
So if we have anybody in this side on my right or left,
I visited like a month ago, and we are from
what about
New
here?
Jersey, and we are members of PUFIC, which was the first Universalist Church in Canada.
Welcome. How about here?
Well, welcome.
And the last section over here, anyone new visiting? Now, are Jan Dunn and or John Wall here this morning? Would you please come forward and get your shiny new member badges?
Thank you, and we're very happy to be members here.
Also, I'd like to let everyone know that after service, we will be having a talk back. We're going to do things a little differently this morning. Instead of meeting in the corner of the sanctuary, we're going to meet up front like we used to. So it's an optional thing for those that are new or anyone else, but we would love for you to join us. It's a time for us to gather back here and discuss the message of the day, and sometimes things may arise from those discussions that lead us down a different path. It's a good way for us to get to know one another and connect with one another. So I do invite you to join us after service. And we usually try to finish by noon. Also, we have quite a few announcements in your order of service. This Wednesday, February 8th, from 10 to 11:30, we are continuing our Centering Our Faith talks led by Ann Harrison. If you cannot make this particular talk, we will continue with another talk on March 8th, April 8th, and May 8th. There is a sign-up sheet still in the foyer if you're interested. Please sign up for that, and that is where we will be discussing any new additions, addendums, or what we need to do with our upcoming principles. Also next Sunday, February 10th, Reverend Dr. Neil Jones will be here in person and will be sharing his words of wisdom on how to love. Also on that day, after Talkback, those that have been involved with sharing our stories with myself and Ann Harrison, we will be continuing that around 12:30, from 12:30 to 2. And I just wanted to let you know to keep an eye out for your email coming from Ann, just as a reminder and a synopsis of what we may be discussing on that day as well. And another busy day this week, Music on Malthus. We will be hosting Matt Nakoa, and he has quite the bio, if you can see that. He has been recognized by the Boston Globe and the Arc of Music magazine. He has won quite a few awards. He also has a website, which is listed here on the insert if you want to go get a peek at what his performances are. And it's a lot of fun, and I would encourage you all to come. The doors open at 6:15, show at 7, and the cost of admission is $25. And on Saturday, March 18th at 7 p.m. here at the church will be a story, song, and poetry session featuring one of our past members and poet, Bill Newby. If you have any questions or want some more information about that, you can see maybe one of the other people that will be presenting. That would be Ellen Titus, David and Sarah, John Shepard, Donna Titus, Marcella Palmer, Mike Nicholson, and Joanne Malash. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Reverend Dick Hood with our opening words.
Thank you, Kim. I want to add my words of welcome to those of you who might be either first timers or second or third timers, we welcome you in this sanctuary. And this morning's opening words talk about this sanctuary and how meaningful it is for those of us who have been here for at least a few years. We love our sanctuary and all that it stands for. Jews love their temple and its reminders of a glorious past. Muslims love their mosque as a symbol of Muhammad's greatness. Catholics love their cathedrals and the grandeur of their enormity. Protestants love their variety of churches, all under the sign of the cross. We, too, love our sanctuary and the people who inhabit this place, who come each and every Sunday, who come to be challenged, to be inspired, to share our common values, and maybe perhaps to have a cup of coffee. Welcome to our holy place once again. This morning we're going to sing verses 1 and 4. It's a long hymn, we're not going to sing them all. Verses 1 and 4 of hymn number 354. Please rise as you're willing and able.
This is our time to share joys and concerns. This helps us grow as a community, and it encourages support among the members of our congregation. You're invited to come forward, take a stone from the table, tell us your name and your joy or your concern, and then place the stone back in the cairn. Anyone who wishes can come forward.
Hi, I'm Mary Lemon. I just want to share the most fabulous joy for me this past weekend. I took my two sons who are in their 50s on a cruise to the Bahamas. And it's the first time since we were probably living in my house that I was alone with both of them. And we had a blast. It was just a blast. And I got so much joy from it, and I know they did too. So that's all. I just wanted to share another special moment. Thanks.
Well, I have a happy announcement. My name is Gordon, and I see Tom Duff in the audience, which makes me very happy. But the thing I want to announce today is that Lynn and I have accepted the challenge of running the pledge drive this year. That's right, lots of applause, because nobody ever wants this job. I've done it a few times in the past, and it's always been interesting and nice and everything else. But I want to tell you, this year is even better than all the years in the past, because we have Clay and Lynette Barnard. Clay is our president, and Lynette is his assistant, sort of. I think she does more than an assist. She's very, very important to the whole thing. And they have a plan for this church that extends for 2 years. And we're going to need some money to support that plan because we're going to let the community know that we are here. And we're going to do some advertising and we're going to do some promoting of the church, which we usually don't do. So anyway, this year is really, really important for us to raise some money. And so you'll hear from me and some others during the raising of the funds for this year's pledge drive. What does this say down here?
This says no announcement.
No, this is for our church, and this is the engine that drives us. So you're going to hear from me again, whether it's allowed or not allowed.
I have to ask, what does this cake look like?
I always forget the rock.
It's a bundt cake. Looks like it might be homemade.
My name is Frank Plamenhoff. I'm one of a handful of members of this congregation who joined in the mid to late 80s, 1980s. And there aren't too many of us who are still alive, and a couple of less who are still active members of the congregation. A couple of weeks ago, I had trouble sleeping. In fact, I'm always coming in late if I come in at all because of insomnia. But anyhow, a couple of weeks ago, we were sitting over there and I got a songbook. Actually, it was sort of fake from an aisle behind me. And in it, I noticed the cover that the hymn book was donated by Dorothy Fine. Now, Dorothy passed away. Dorothy was my closest friend for, I don't know, over 35 years. We met in 1984. We lived in the same condo. And we had a donation for new songbooks, and Dorothy donated, and this one has donated by Dorothy Fine in memory of her father, Joseph Ulmer, a longtime church musician. Anyhow, she had written an inscription in it, and I'm going to read it to you. I know it's going to be long, but not that long. And I think it may tell you something about her. Her funeral was not in this congregation. She has a couple of sons who treated her in a way very poorly. They inherited millions from her, and when she was dying, they just left. She had aides coming in and caring for her, and me visiting her. Here's the inscription she wrote in here. It wasn't really an inscription, we'll find out. As we look at the announcement, let us remember our faith is a faith of deeds as well as affirmation. And we are called to live our beliefs throughout the week. We are intertwined. Think of all the elements of your life that have helped bring you to this moment, right now. When you came to this congregation, you chose to let it be a part of your journey. Maybe just for today, maybe for a lifetime. This congregation is this religious community is not something outside of you. It is you and me and the people sitting next to you. It's enhanced by having you in it today, and it shall flourish tomorrow because of your involvement and commitment. Well, I won't say, and part of the commitment could be shown during the pledge drive. That wasn't in here. As we share our offering, so she was obviously she wrote this to read it before the offering. As we share our offering, let us remember that we are co-creators in all that this community can be. Visitors, let the basket pass. I should also mention that Dorothy is the one who talked me into first coming to this congregation, and she used to always joke that I was her one and only convert. I love
I will take 2 stones for the joys and concerns that remain in your hearts. And now we're going to read an affirmation, but not the one that's printed in here. I've taken the liberty of announcing that we're going to use different affirmations over the next few months. This is in concert with the work that's being done by the UUA and by this congregation to affirm its beliefs and to potentially accept something new. So if you will, please turn to number 473 in the back of your hymnal. This is a short affirmation, but I think it says a lot about who we are. Okay, and if you'll read with me, love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek through true love, and to help one another. And now, Anne.
As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that it is essential for us to be able to talk about the essence of who we are and what we are all about. And that is really important for us to not just live our faith, but also to be able to articulate our faith. I think that was a perfect example of Dorothy. What she wrote inside that hymnal expresses just that. It's not just about how we live our life, but it's about the words that we actually say. And in a perfect world, we would be fluent in the holy and sacred words that we use to describe the things that we feel in our heart. We'd be able to find the right words to describe the experiences that touch our spirit. And we would speak an inspirational language, one that would bring us comfort here in this sanctuary, and that we could also carry with us out into the world that would help guide us through our days. It would be a language of reverence. But this world is not perfect, and language is complicated. And as you have most likely seen, many Unitarian Universalists struggle with certain words. So much so that some of us have adopted a minimalist use of religious language, while others have, what I would say, have actually built up an actual resistance to it. Fortunately for us here at UUCL, we have a team of 4 ministers who each, in their own way, speak a very rich language of faith. Each week, they share religious words which help to ground us. And many of you know that a couple of weeks ago, our minister, Reverend Charlie Tyler, gave the sermon at the ecumenical service which began the annual community celebration of the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. It was an interfaith service. Some of us were there. It was held at Queen Chapel on Hilton Head. And as a Unitarian Universalist, Charlie stood on the altar, surrounded by African Methodist Episcopal ministers, Baptist, Lutheran, and Presbyterian ministers, and a rabbi, all of his colleagues who seemed to speak so easily and intimately with their God. And without stumbling, Charlie used his religious language, and he brought everyone in that room into a space of reverence. And grace happened. I can't even tell you what his exact words were, but I can tell you that they were far stronger than the differences in theology that were in the chapel that night. And today, Reverend Dick Hood is going to help us explore the words that we use in worship. We as you use. And he will introduce a vocabulary of reverence which I think we will find beautiful. And to set the tone for Dick's message, I'm going to share a poem that was written by a UU minister by the name of Nancy Schaefer. And it's called That Which Holds Us. Nope, it's not called that. It's called That Which Holds All. That which holds all. It goes like this. Because she wanted everyone to feel included in her prayer, she said right at the beginning several names for the holy. Spirit, she said, Holy One, Mystery, God. But then, thinking that these weren't enough ways of addressing that which cannot fully be addressed, she added some particularities, saying, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Ancient Holy One, mystery we will not ever fully know, Gracious God, and also Spirit of this earth, God of Sarah, Gaia, Thou. And then, with her tongue loosened, she fell to naming superlatives as well. Most creative one, greatest source, closest hope. Even though superlatives for the sacred seemed to her probably redundant, but then she couldn't stop. One who made the stars, she said, although she knew technically a number of those present didn't really believe that the stars had been made by anyone or thing, but they had just luckily happened. One who is an entire ocean of compassion, she said, and no one laughed. That which has been present since before the beginning, she said, and the room was silent. And although she hadn't imagined it this way, others began to offer names. Peace, said one. One my mother knew, said another. Ancestor, said a third. Wind, rain, breath, said one near the back. Refuge, that which holds all. A child said, water. Someone said, kunyin. Then womb, witness, great kindness, great eagle, eternal stillness. And then there wasn't any need to say the things she thought would be important to say. And everyone sat hushed until someone said, Amen. This is the time in our service where we share from our abundance. And as most of you know, we will at this time continue to support the Sandalwood Food Pantry. And so if you've brought non-perishable items this Sunday or plan to in the next Sunday, please bring those and leave them at the back of the sanctuary, and we'll get them to the Sandalwood Food Pantry. Or you can go to their website at sandalwoodfoodpantry.com and make a monetary donation. And to piggyback what Frank said, and who else said something about the pledge, and Ann, we're going to pass the basket so that we may collect your donations so that we may continue our good works inside and outside of these walls. generosity.
Thank you, Kim. Well, it's nice to know we're going to have a pledge drive with a few laughs. Serious work, but if you have a few laughs along the way, that helps too. We're talking about words this Sunday, and the word of the day, which has never been mouthed, I don't think, from this pulpit. The word of the day is goosebumps. Goosebumps. Goosebumps is when the hypothalamus, this is from Wikipedia, when the hypothalamus sends a message to your skin to tighten up, and small bumps appear as the skin becomes tightened. And it can be you get goosebumps because you're cold or fearful, but you can also get goosebumps from excitement, some kind of something that stimulates the brain in such a way that produces goosebumps. There are numerous causes, I think, of excitement that might bring goosebumps to people. Someone mentioned John Shepherd, not bodily, but his playing, gives people goosebumps because it is so beautiful. For others, it might be a movie or a particular site. The Grand Canyon is said to bring goosebumps to people. All kinds of different things can bring goosebumps. And I want to focus this morning particularly on words and collections of words that can bring goosebumps. And start, as I frequently do, with a personal story. And this story even gets settled because it's in 3 parts. When I was young, my grandmother used to pick me up from my home and take me to the First Universalist Church in Waltham, Massachusetts. And as was pretty common back then, when you were a child, you still had to go to church for a short while before you were dismissed to go to church school. And during that little period of time, the congregation used to say what was called then the avowal of faith. And it's really a precursor to our 7 principles. They didn't call it a creed. They didn't like that word, but they called it an avowal of faith. And I learned it because I heard it every Sunday for all my childhood. And it started with the words, "We avow our faith in God as eternal and all-conquering love." I thought for a number of years, because of all-conquering, that God and Superman looked a lot alike. All-conquering. It wasn't until I was in probably between the 8th and 9th grade that I saw that expression again. And I saw it in what was for me kind of a nerve-wracking time. I was at camp in Maine, a Unitarian Universalist conference center called Ferry Beach, which had large youth programs. And for some reason, I never figured out exactly how, I got in the worship workshop. I think it's because I didn't want to do basket making or archery, so they put me in the worship workshop. And it was led by a woman who was rather forceful in nature, and the idea was that this workshop over a period of 2 weeks would formulate a chapel service, because we had chapel every day, and by the way, back then, it was mandatory chapel. Those days are over. But that we would, as a group of 8th and 9th graders, we would do the worship service in the outside chapel. And there might be maybe 150 between counselors and kids sitting on benches outside. And the lady in about the third day of this workshop said, you will do the opening words, and I'll help you with that. You will do a little prayer, and you, Richard, will preach the sermon. My first sermon. And I was petrified. I had to work on it, although she did edit it for me, but I actually had to write just maybe a couple of paragraphs. But it was a very nervous time. And I actually still have that piece of paper somewhere in my files. I haven't seen it for years, but it still exists. My first sermon. And when it was my time, I got up out of the bench that I was sitting in the congregation with my piece of paper and approached the pulpit to deliver my first sermon. And there, on the altar, which I hadn't really looked at before, inscribed down there where everybody could see it, was the phrase, God is love. I remembered that, and it sort of stuck with me, but it didn't really give me goosebumps until I was out of seminary and serving as pulpit supply, a very small church in Western New York. And come to find out, this church had a tradition of once a year visiting and having a worship service in an old Universalist chapel called the Cobblestone Chapel, built by Universalists all out of cobblestones, and then maintained as a museum. And it was really a very interesting place. Still had the old-fashioned boxes where people sat. And I was told by the lady that kind of was the pulpit person, this is cobblestone. Remember, this is cobblestone. This is special. I think she went on and said, you better damn well be good, because this is a special service. And I worked hard on it, and as I approached, parked and approached my first time in this building and walked up the stairs, and there's this beautiful, small cobblestone building, but there was one piece of granite over the top of the door, and it said, Universalist Church, 1833, which is when it was built, almost 200 years ago now. God is love. That's when I got goosebumps. Somehow that expression that had started for me early as a child, carried on through high school, really got me when I had to walk under this door, built love. That phrase has really taken on a special kind of place in my life. It's not that it doesn't have meaning, it has great meaning, but it has developed, those three little words, a power unto itself. Beyond the meaning, the words have developed power. They have a power to console me, to inspire me, to make me question a variety of different things that are beyond the actual definition, beyond the actual grammar of a subject, a verb, and a predicate. Words do have love, have meaning, and for me, that's God is love. It's almost a talisman. And as I've gone through ministry, I've found out that other people feel the same way, but of course they have different words. One of the most common is the 23rd Psalm. I have done a number of funerals in my lifetime, and some of them for people who were only vaguely connected with the church. So I would go usually and meet with family, and almost universally, the family would request that the 23rd Psalm be read at the funeral. That somehow those words, starting with the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, had taken on some sort of special significance, that when a person died, yeah, those are the words that we want. The words had taken on a power of their own. And there are other words, sometimes affiliated with a different emotion or a different movement. Failure is not an option. Susan B. Anthony. Failure is not an option. Ask not what you can do for your country. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And most recently, how about these words? I have a dream. Words that transcend their meaning and become special unto themselves. And that's the power, what I call the power of words. And in this congregation, I think we have some of our, what I would call worship words. What makes this change of words that are simply definitions to words that have a power of their own, worship words, I might call them? Well, there are some prerequisites, I think. One of them is they have to be concise. We don't remember long sentences. That if words are going to have meaning to us, they've got to be concise. Admitters have figured that out, starting with Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. That's a trite example, but the advertisers have figured out that words that are going to be remembered have to be concise. They have to be simple. Can't have complicated language. What's more simple than I have a dream? Yeah, well, a lot was said, and a lot has been said because of the power of those words. They have to be poetic in a way, and I'm not sure how I describe poetic, but they have to be poetic. They have to have fluency. They have to kind of flow together. And of course, for words to become special, to become powerful words have to be easily remembered. God is love. I had occasion recently to attend a sad occasion, a high mass at a Roman Catholic church. And I hadn't been in a Roman Catholic church in decades for some reason. And, obviously, first of all, I was one of the few Protestants, I think, in the sanctuary. But what struck me about the Mass was how the words that were familiar to the congregation, the words of the Mass, the words of the Rosary, how powerful it was for those people. The words of the Mass aren't powerful for me, particularly, but now I understand, I think, a little better why Roman Catholics go to Mass and why they want to have the same ritual over and over and over again. And they want to hear the same words over and over and over again. Why? Because those words have transcended just their definition. They have somehow come over to a different world, which for Roman Catholics are worship words. We Unitarian Universalists, I think, are in the process of developing worship words of our own. The 7 principles certainly contain a great amount of poetic language, and that while the whole 7 principles can't easily be spouted off, it's easy to remember one or the other. And the one that sticks in mind for me as a powerful word and image is the interdependent web. We are responsible for one another. The interdependent web. And you don't see in the 7 principles a long definition of the interdependent web, but it's supposed to be understood intuitively. But we have some other things that I think are approaching worship words, and maybe worship words for some of you who've been in this congregation for a while. Spirit of life, come unto me. Out of the same song, hymn, giving life the shape of justice. Wow. What does that mean? For some, I know one person in particular, not here, but I know that there's one person for whom that phrase is probably the most important phrase of her life. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope. We say those words every Sunday. Kim said them this morning. And I think that that's taken on a meaning beyond like, okay, here's the lighter, boom, and we're going to light that chalice, like whatever. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope. Love is the doctrine, or is the spirit of this church, which we read this morning as an alternate covenant. And finally, I hope that we're going to develop a new set of worship words in the hymn that we sang this morning. And I thank you, Seven Principles. I know it's not necessarily an easy song to sing, but we've sung it once, we're saying it today, and we'll be singing it again if I get to choose the hymn. And that phrase that sort of somehow, at least for me, has this real stickiness is, and we believe in life. We don't believe in death. We don't really have much to do with the hereafter, but here we are and we believe in life. Words have power. Words are important. And that's why, in part, that I believe very strongly that we need an eighth principle, or if we rewrite all this, we seem to want to rewrite things all the time. We rewrite the seven principles and add an eighth one. We do need some sort of words that describe what our goals are about the elimination or the lessening of racism. And if you heard Neil Jones speak, this was 2, maybe 3 Sundays ago, when it was almost a litany of the differences of an opportunity for African Americans today, in terms of education and financial ability and ability to rise up. It was really kind of frightening. So I believe strongly that we need an eighth principle. And I'd like to share with you, I don't usually read during sermons, but once in a while I find something that says it better than I do. Some of you may actually know the man that wrote these words. His name is Jim Key, and he was a member, he's passed away now, he was a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here in Beaufort, South Carolina. And he was, in 2017, the moderator of the Unitarian Universalist Association. That is next to the president, the highest elected office. And he was moderator during some really tough times when, for a variety of reasons, the denomination had to face, in and of itself, its own institutional racism. And he wrote a pastoral letter to all Unitarian Universalists. And I want to read just one paragraph of it. The term white supremacist once referred exclusively to individuals and organizations that openly espoused the superiority of white people. In recent years, however, the words have changed, and they have come to refer to a culture or a social narrative that places the needs, desires, stories, and well-being of the lives of white people over those of people of color. And this is the sentence I really like. It is white supremacy, the water we swim in. It is as much a part of our lives that it has become business as usual. White supremacy is a continuum. When we refuse to acknowledge our place in the continuum, we risk being lulled back into complicity. Not this time, friends. Forward together, not one step back. Wonderful words. I wish I'd written that. I've kept this for a long time thinking that sometime I'm going to read this in a sermon, and today was the day. However, there's always a however from the pulpit. If asked to vote, as we might be, I don't know what the process is going to be, and I don't think we do either, but if I'm asked to vote as a member of this congregation on the inclusion of the eighth principle as it is currently written, I will vote no. And the reason is that the eighth principle has within it so much jargon and so many additional and unmemorable words, and it's too long. They forgot, writing the eighth principle, what the 7 previous principles are like. Brief, concise, fluent, to the point, and memorable. The eighth principle, as written, has none of that. How about something just as simple as we covenant to work to eliminate racism in ourselves and in the world? Simple. Okay, that's my political point I would make, and I've been thinking about making it for some time until I decided to talk about words. And you may not feel that words have power, and maybe I have misspoken if I think that there's something that gives you goosebumps. I hope not. But perhaps, maybe next Sunday, as we assemble once again, as we say similar words, and I hope that we do use for next Sunday the affirmation with the 7 principles, only so people can hear them once again. Then we can use other words. And listen to the language. And listen and see if perhaps the language that we speak each Sunday in our own rituals has meaning for us. In our own rituals. I don't think a few years ago I would have used that term, but I use it now and I use it comfortably. Perhaps next Sunday and perhaps in the future, you will find words, worship words, that are meaningful for you. Perhaps they already exist. Perhaps you need to understand better the power of words. And perhaps, just as perhaps, you might even feel goosebumps. Thank you. John? I've chosen not to sing a closing hymn. We're going to have a responsive reading instead, which is something we don't do very often in this church. It's number 657 in the rear of your hymnal. I chose this for 2 reasons. First, I love the words. The words have power, at least to me. Second of all, they answer, I think, the question that was brought up at our new members meeting last Sunday, and certainly is a question that you use here all the time. Oh, so how come you can believe anything? That's the place where you can believe anything you want. Well, it's not true. And I think that this reading answers that. So I will read the first sentence and you will read the italics. It matters what we believe. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged.
Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way to wider deep.
Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities.
Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the world of happiness.
Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies.
Other beliefs are bonds in the world community, where spirit differences unify the pattern.
Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction.
Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide distance for exploration.
Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of responsiveness.
Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal worth.
Some beliefs are rigid like the body of death, impotent in a changing world.
Other beliefs are malleable, like a young sapling, ever growing with the thrust of life.
So be it.
In closing, I'd like to thank Reverend Dick Hood and all those who participated to make today's service possible. And just a reminder we would love for you to join us for Talk Back after having some coffee, and perhaps we can share some goosebumps.
These are the words we sung this morning. And we believe in life and in the power of love. And we have a joy being together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is the answer. So be it.
Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. The words are in your order of service. While we extinguish this flame, we still bear in our hearts the light of truth, the warmth of unity, and the fire of commitment, until we are together again.
Thank you all. Welcome.